My husband Jack is in the military. We have generally lived on base at every station we have been to because the surrounding towns can be very crime-ridden and sketchy, and with my husband gone most of the time, the extra security is appreciated. I work from home due to us moving so often. One afternoon, I was taking a break, had made a bite to eat, and was snuggling up on the couch with my dog. That's when I heard the sliding glass door open. It was so nonchalant I thought it was Jack. I saw the cat run from the kitchen and a shadow standing near the door entering it. I thought maybe he had come back for something, so I called out for him and was like, "What are you doing home? Did you forget something?" No answer. This is where I just got an eerie feeling. After I asked what he was doing here, I saw the shadow move and heard the click of the sliding door lock. From there, he walked to the laundry room and shut the door. I still had received no response, so I'm sitting on the couch, scared out of my mind, and I call my husband, hoping to hear his phone in the laundry room. I don't hear a ring, but he does answer. I asked him why he came home, and he didn't answer me. All he says is, "That wasn't me. Grab the dog and get in your car." I freak out. After getting off the phone with Jack, I grab the dog and run to my car. From there, I called the military police. Waiting for them was probably the longest 20 minutes of my life. When they got there, they cleared the house and found no one. They asked me to make a statement, and even they were baffled that someone would try this on a base. We still live here. I'm just so scared that he'll come back. It was a Memorial Day weekend, so my friend group rented a lakefront house for the weekend 3 hours away from home. It was cheap because it was in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina. It was Callista, Cara, Zelda, Mia, Cheryl, and myself. We all piled into Cheryl's truck. I was the one to find this place on Airbnb, and what was most appealing about it was the big deck with the hot tub on it that overlooked the lake. There was also a fire pit right by the water with a bunch of Adirondack chairs around it. Everything about it seemed perfect for a few days and nights of getting wasted with some friends. The Airbnb host told me that when we got to the property, there was a hidden key behind the mailbox to unlock the front driveway gate. The driveway was made of gravel and dirt, and it cut through a small opening in the woods, bringing a slight uphill to a bigger opening where the house was. Cheryl parked the truck right next to the front deck. The deck wrapped around the entire house, which was pretty cool. The first thing I did was walk to the back part of the deck and look at the view of the lake. It was very beautiful and peaceful. Too bad we were about to be blasting music and partying. Right as we were done unpacking, everyone cracked open beers, and we wasted no time letting the weekend begin. We played beer pong, cornhole, barbecued, and blasted music for hours. We were really loud because, as far as we knew, this was the only house around here. It's not like there were any nearby neighbors to complain. The phone connection out there was very spotty, so we really were just living in the moment, socializing with each other, not distracted by social media and whatnot. As it was getting darker and we were sitting by the fire pit, we all got startled when a voice came from the edge of the woods. It was some middle-aged woman with short hair. She started yelling at us to lower the music, so someone lowered the volume of the music. The woman started more or less lecturing us, saying how we out-of-towners always come here, litter in the lake, and create nothing but noise. She seemed like genuine white trash. I apologized on behalf of all of us, and one of the girls asked the woman if she lived nearby and if she could hear the music. The woman responded, still in a yell, that she couldn't even hear herself think. She didn't acknowledge the other question regarding if she lived nearby. Then, she just walked away into the woods, like literally into the dark woods. It was so strange. When we were sure she was out of earshot, we all erupted into laughter. As bizarre as the encounter was, we had to make light of it, but it also did put a slight damper on things considering we thought for sure we were far enough away from any neighboring houses to blast music and be loud. But we continued to drink, and pretty soon that concern was forgotten about, and we got loud again. Some immeasurable amount of time passed before a song ended, and it went quiet for a second, and we heard a voice calling out from the lake. We paused the music and listened, and sure enough, a voice was calling out for help in the middle of the lake. We all looked at each other nervously. I stood up and went to the water and yelled out, "Who's out there? Are you in the water?" The voice called back, "Yes, help." Adrenaline started to kick in. There was a kayak leaned up against the deck by the water with 2 sets of paddles. Cheryl and I agreed to paddle out there in an effort to save whoever was out there. We yelled out at them to keep calling out, but as we got in the water, the calls seemed to get further away no matter how deep we got into the lake. After like 5 to 10 minutes of rowing out to the complete darkness of this lake, calling out repeatedly for that man, we heard it was just utter silence. All we could see were the lights from the house sitting at the edge of the lake, and then just darkness in every other direction. It was only the sound of the light splashes of water and then screams, female screams, coming from the direction of the house. They sounded gut-wrenching, like genuine screams of danger. It sounded like more than one, at least 2 of the girls' screams. We immediately started paddling back, even more panicked now. The screams stopped long before we got back to the shore. We screamed out for our friends, but we checked inside and outside of the cabin, and all 4 of them were gone, vanished without a trace. We tried texting and calling them, but we had no bars, of course. Cheryl's truck was still there, so we took it and drove up the road looking for the nearest neighboring house. We found it, a similar opening in the woods that led up a hill and onto a property where we saw a house with the lights on. We went to ring the doorbell multiple times, but no one ever answered. We went to look through one of the windows in the front, and what we saw sent chills up my spine. We could see clear as day into the living room. There was a lamp on in the corner, and in the middle of the room, somewhat close to the window, was that trashy woman we saw who came and yelled at us before. She was standing still, doing nothing, just facing the window looking out at us. She had a borderline angry-looking expression. We yelled, asking for help, but when she wouldn't move, we were too creeped out to stay there and left. As we got back in the truck, about to drive to another house, my phone started vibrating. It was Mia calling me. Thank God. I picked up and asked her they were and what happened, but I could barely get a word in as Mia said there were 2 men with axes in their hands wearing masks over their heads walking towards them out of the woods, and that's why the girls screamed and they all ran away down the road. One of them was currently on the phone with 911, and they were waiting. It was out in the woods right on the side of the road. It wasn't long after that the call disconnected, and I wasn't able to reach him again. So we waited on the side of the road, not far from the house. When we finally saw flashing lights coming down the road, we waved them down and asked them to help us find our friends first. We drove up the road until we saw our friends come out from the woods, waving their hands. We scooped them up and followed the police back to the house. Once there, we collected all of our belongings as Mia and the girls frantically recounted what they had just gone through. Oddly enough, the Airbnb was not broken into, and none of our stuff was taken. There was no sign of any men with axes. We also told the police about the cries for help in the lake, which I believe prompted a search team to come to the scene. By then, we were already long gone from that place. We never looked back. After much persistence and battling with Airbnb and the host, we got our money back for the stay, well, most of it. None of us could ever figure out this situation, like if it was all a trap. If the calls for help from the lake were linked with the men approaching the house with the axes, and if that woman was also affiliated somehow with this. Was it just to scare us out of there, or were they really going to attack us? I don't know, and I don't care. I just don't do remote places anymore after this, and I know the girls won't either. Out of all my strange experiences, this is probably the most compelling I had, simply because I was not alone when it happened. I was not with just the average kind of people either. I'll put in as much detail exactly as I remembered them, so this may be long. I can't mention the name of the company I work for to protect my job, but it's one of the largest telcos in the Philippines, which is synonymous with the word world. I currently work as one of the senior IT network and server engineers there. I usually get assigned to work on priority repairs on various cell sites and server data centers, mostly in far-flung provinces. This happened in mid-December of 2018 in Nueva Vizcaya, mountainous province in the northern region of the Philippines. It was a priority service call, Sarah T1, the highest of priorities, wherein even the CEO of the company received status updates since the cell site in question also services various military communications devices. As soon as I got into the office, I was dispatched immediately, carrying with me various equipment to replace the existing ones at the cell side. It was a 6-hour drive from Manila. I was asked to go to a specific meeting point in the town nearest the cell site to rendezvous with my escort, an 8-member team from the Philippines 1st Army Scout Ranger Regiment. The area of the cell site is a place where the local communist movement, the New People's Army, is highly active. Apparently, the NPA carried out an operation early in the morning of that day, which caused some of the damage to the equipment. The team I met up with was led by one of my former high school classmates. Let's call him Lieutenant Knox. He had even specifically asked for me as he knew I worked for the telco. He had his men transfer the equipment to their truck, and we began to travel to the cell site. It was already dark at the time. During the long uphill ride, Lieutenant Knox and I did some catching up when they suddenly received a call. I don't understand military speak, so I could not tell exactly what we talked about, but he updated us accordingly, saying that a village on the way to the cell site requested assistance with a possible NPA member harassing a household. Apparently, the man had climbed up on the roof of someone's house, and he was still in the area. Being the nearest, Lieutenant Knox responded that his team would be handling it, so we drove towards the area, keeping the headlights turned off. The countryside, especially the poorer places, are very dark. Soldiers aren't allowed to smoke at night in places like these since the light from their cigarettes could be clearly seen even from afar, giving away their position. It was that dark here. I was hesitant since I'm not exactly a soldier, but he brushed it off, saying it would be a good chance for me to become a soldier for at least one night. Lieutenant Knox, I can say, is a battle-hardened junior officer. He's been to a number of dangerous situations and has fought in many encounters, both high-profile and low-key. He's the type of guy to jump in quickly then ask questions later. I remember him being like that even in school, a very cocky individual but not entirely without cause, especially now that he was in the army. He even received a medal recently, although I wasn't sure for what. Either way, he said, we're going in. It's part of the job. Now, you have to understand the Philippine Army usually does the police work in these areas where communists, Muslim insurgents, or bandits are active. And when you send in the scouts, the best our military has to offer, you can get an idea of the kind of situation it places in. Even other countries recognized the abilities of the Philippine Scout Rangers, all the more so in this case since these scouts came from the 1st Regiment. They're the best the scouts have to offer, from what I was made to understand. We got to the place a little over 5 minutes after, with me still having second thoughts. Dude, make up your mind. Either you shadow me or I leave you in the truck. But if you stay here, you're gonna be free dinner for the commies. Can't spare you a babysitter for this one, he explained to me. So he made the choice easier for me. I didn't have plans to be abducted. I was already soiling myself, basically not cut out for this stuff. I just wanted to repair the cell site and go home, but I did have plans to get his wife to get back at him for this. Here, he said, handing me a loaded 9mm and 2 clips. I know you're used to this one, and the safety's on. I sat there thinking I wasn't getting paid enough for this job, and I recalled my company insurance policy. It doesn't even cover sports-related injuries, let alone anything you'd see in a firefight. But I didn't have time to dilly-dally, so I stuck with my friend instead of waiting for someone to drag me into the woods and getting held for ransom, which no one's gonna pay for, let's face it. The plan was for 6 of his men to break off into 3 pairs to surround the house in question. Me, Knox, and his sniper Mason were to head over to the water tower about 60 meters out. I guess he planned to snipe the guy and have his men stand by on the ground in case the sniper missed. As we trekked over to the water tower, he told me, "You're too stiff, man. You're wearing dark clothes. No one's gonna see you. We'll be in and out in 10 minutes. You're a VIP, and that's why I came and had my sergeant stay with the platoon at the cell site, so don't worry so much." I didn't know VIPs had to join in responding to calls like this, but the scouts were undermanned as it was already, and that's why my friend needed to multitask at the moment. When we got to the water tower, Private First Class Mason immediately positioned himself, and Lieutenant Knox sat beside him while I positioned myself behind. At that time, I was thinking to myself, well, yeah, this wasn't so bad. I'm far and safe away from that area. But then I heard Mason say, "Sir, you need to see this." Knox brought out some type of binoculars, I guess they call it an NV scope. I couldn't see his reaction because it was dark, but he was silent for a moment as he put down the binoculars. "What in the world?" was all Knox could whisper. He then turned to me and asked me to look at the direction he pointed and to tell him what I saw. I was initially concerned, thinking that there were more NPAs now and that we were outnumbered. A reaction like this from a seasoned scout didn't exactly paint a nice picture in my mind. But what I saw was definitely something that will probably haunt me for the rest of my life. I wish I hadn't taken those binoculars at all. I even wish I saw more communists instead of what I did see. The image was green, and I saw someone on the roof of a house. It was a man. He didn't have a shirt on, nor did he have any weapons on him. He had very short hair or a shaved head, and he was barefoot. He had jeans on, but the lower part was wrapped from what I could tell. He had dark skin and seemed normal at first glance, but then I noticed his arms, which were very, very long. His hands were almost past his knees, and his fingers were also very long and pointed. The fingers were longer than normal and had tips that looked like long nails or even claws. The first thing on my mind was, this can't be real. "Sir," Mason said, "it's moving." I didn't expect what happened next. The thing, whatever it really was, looked right at our group. Even from that distance, it was unmistakable. He or it had its head turned in our direction, and its eyes were solid white. Eye shine, like a cat's eyes. Right then, I nearly dropped the binoculars. Had it not been strapped to my wrist, it probably would have fallen straight through the grated flooring of the water tower. Knox looked to me as if asking what I saw, and all I could say was, "It looked at us, man. It knows we're up here." Almost at the same time, Mason begged, "Sir, your orders." My friend gave the order to put 2 in its head. I think the first shot hit the mark because we heard a scream echo throughout the valley. It sounded like a mix of a high-pitched male screaming and a cornered animal crying out in pain. I'm not sure how to describe it beyond that, but it was the first time I'd ever heard such a sound. I'm sure all of us heard it because of how loud the sound was. Mason never let out a second shot. I don't know if he did so on purpose or if he was caught off guard, but we then heard automatic rifle shots in the distance. Knox immediately told us to go. Mason went down the ladder first at a ridiculous rate, then me, then Knox. Back on the ground, we ran over to the house. These guys were fast and easily outran me. Knox had to basically drag me along the way so I wouldn't be left behind. Honestly, I was reluctant to run where we were headed. I wasn't as hardcore as these scouts. I could barely even keep myself from soiling myself. There was still someone firing in the direction towards the tree line. When we got to the house, near the front, we found one of the soldiers sitting against the wall. His buddies seemed to be applying first aid. His left forearm had a long and nasty gash that leaked fiercely onto the soil. I wanted to vomit. He reported to Knox that something jumped up from the roof and landed right on top of him. It was just after Mason fired. While he didn't get a good look at the attacker due to the darkness, he specifically refused to call it human. Even his buddy didn't think it was human at all. The other 4 soldiers got back to us, saying that the assailant got away. Knox decided to get to know the people in the house, and we found out that a young couple lived there. In fact, the woman was 7 months pregnant. They had texted their local village official, who in turn requested the military to check since, again, they suspected it was an NPA. The 3 of us, Knox, Mason, and me never told anyone, even the couple, what we saw that night. We simply stated it was a machete-swinging communist trying to rob the couple. After all, the NPAs were known to resort to banditry. A while after that, we finally made our way to the cell site. I simply couldn't stop shaking. When we got there, I immediately got to doing my necessary repairs. Knox and Mason stuck to their story when the rest of their platoon asked about it regarding the recent encounter. They never mentioned anything about the man's description nor the strange animal sound. After working an all-nighter and making sure the cell site was operational, Knox and his men minus the injured one took me back to the town where I had parked my car as soon as daybreak came. As his men loaded the damaged equipment I replaced into my car, Knox talked to me. At first, he was trying to joke around, saying I could probably enlist in the regular army now since I had some first-hand experience. I went along with this for a moment, hoping to forget about the strange incident. But inside, I was utterly horrified. However, before I was able to drive away, Knox said to me, "Dude, Mason, we saw the same thing you did. You know what it was, don't you?" I never responded, but inside, I think I knew what he was talking about. The aswang, a mythical creature from Filipino folklore, the stuff of a Filipino child's nightmares. The description, the sound, it was the only thing that made sense explaining what the thing was during the Spanish era from the 1500s to 1890. These creatures were said to be once human who were supposedly blessed by the moon priestesses of old called Baba even, so that the people could have the power to fight the Spanish colonizer who had done them wrong. It is said that the Spaniards decided to persecute these priestesses for witchcraft, then spread tales that aswangs attacked locals and foreigners alike. The aswang is a creature said to be able to shape-shift into either a human or an animal, but it is never able to correctly imitate one or the other. As a human, it has leathery black skin and disproportionate limbs. As an animal, like a cat or dog, it is always black and 3 times the normal size. It can neither speak nor do animal calls, it can only grouch out or scream. They usually eat the flesh of recently deceased humans and animals, but have a strange preference for the ill or pregnant women. Pregnant women like the one in the village. They can never become human again, and being in a swang is hereditary. No one will turn if attacked by one, although the wounds they inflict are often fatal. This is what Knox and I were both thinking, but I'd always considered it just that, just folklore. Yet there's no denying that what we saw that night wasn't human. I have never been back to the general area after, while Knox and his team had been dispatched to the south dealing with ISIS members. Before I posted this, I asked them about that night. It's hard to imagine a soldier of his caliber believing in such tales. I find it even harder as I write this to believe what I saw was real. But no matter how hard I try to come up with an explanation, I couldn't, except for the idea that it truly was an aswang, the legend passed down by our forefathers. Knox said to me in reply, "I told you before, you and I both know what the thing was." I go with what I see, and most of the time, I don't have the luxury of time to doubt whatever is in front of me. I don't know if I'll ever know the truth, and I can't be sure if I even want to know. It was Memorial Day weekend of 2021. The world was recovering from COVID, and everyone was looking to celebrate. That included my friends and me. Our friend George has a really nice big boat. Well, his dad has a big nice boat, but George gets to use it. The lucky bastard was born into a lot of money. We do reap some benefits from being friends with him, though. Out in the bay was a big boat meetup planned for Memorial Day, so our core group, Grant, Hale, and I, all met up at George's house on the water, and we took the boat out from there to meet up with George's other boat friends. There were a bunch of boats tied together in a shallow part of the bay, and everyone was hopping from boat to boat and walking around in the water with drinks in hand. I was getting really drunk along with everyone else, and unfortunately, that included George. No one really realized until it was too late that he had way too much to drink and was not okay to drive the boat back home. I told him to sleep it off in the cabin, so he went down to sleep. It started to get dark after so many hours of drinking and mingling with other boat people, and one by one, the other boats left. We were the last boat left, just the 4 of us. I went to check on George, and he was still knocked out. We had to stall for hours with each other until he finally woke up. He did seem more sober now, so he started to slowly drive the boat back in the direction of his canal. On the way, we noticed the lights of another boat seemingly following us. George started freaking out, thinking it was the Bay Police. He didn't want to do anything suspicious like speeding up or slowing down, anything that might draw attention, so we kept our speed steady. We made it to the canal, and he lives about 5 minutes up the canal. The boat behind us was still following us up the canal. George was really starting to freak out, worried he'd get a DUI and lose his license, and of course, his dad killing him. The canal is a no-wake zone, so we had to slow it down even more. As we went down the canal, the boat behind us was catching up to us. At this point, we were fully expecting the boat to be a police boat. We started discussing a story to stick to, that we took the boat out and just hung out on the bay. We started hiding all the beer cans, ready to lie completely about having had any beer. We got to George's dock, and he looped the boat around to align it next to it. He did it pretty smoothly for someone who was intoxicated. The boat that was tailing us the entire time approached, and as it began to pass us, we realized it wasn't a police boat at all. It was just a random boat. George said out loud, "Who the hell is this? He knows everyone on his canal," and he said he'd never seen that boat. As it directly passed us, we saw 3 men standing on the back of the boat looking at us. It was honestly in a very aggressive way. George taunted them and said what none of them responded. Their boat passed us, and they continued to watch us. While we were all relieved it wasn't the police, George was now nervous as to why they followed us all the way down the canal when they don't even live on this canal. I said perhaps it's someone visiting a friend's house for Memorial Day, and he reluctantly agreed and said, "Could be." He tied up the boat to the dock, and we helped the best we could. He said he'd clean it tomorrow. We all went inside his house. His parents weren't home this weekend, he had the place to himself. So we suggested throwing a last-minute pool party, but it was already like 10 o'clock, and there wasn't really any chance of throwing anything big that last minute. So the 4 of us went back outside to just hang by the pool, continuing to drink, with all of us planning on crashing at George's place for the night. That boat passed by the house again within maybe 10 minutes, and that's when we really got suspicious. The men on the boat again stared at us, and this time George said nothing. The night became a daze. At some point after this, my memory gets really foggy, as I guess I blacked out. The next thing I remember is waking up with extreme cotton mouth in the middle of the night. At first, I thought the unbearable thirst I was feeling was what caused me to suddenly wake up, but I was very wrong. I looked around the room and saw Grant and Hale on the couch as well, sleeping. I went to the kitchen to drink some water from the faucet like a water fountain, that's how thirsty I was. But in the kitchen, I was met with someone else, dressed in a cliché all-black robbery outfit, including a black ski mask, and he was clear as day holding a gun. I didn't scream. He aimed the gun at me and told me not to make a sound. It was an unexplainable feeling, knowing that my existence could have ended at any given moment. And everything would turn black, washed over my body. He said to me in a quiet voice, "Where is the owner of the house?" I whispered, "I don't know." He asked me where the owner's bedroom is, and I shakily said, "Upstairs." He had me lead him upstairs with a gun to my back, threatening to shoot me if I made any sudden moves or calls for help. When I got to the top of the stairs, I realized there were 2 men behind me, not just one. Both of them were in the same all-black robbery attire. I really didn't want to, but I led them to George's room where he was passed out sleeping. The 2 men shut the bedroom door and had me wake George up without making a commotion. George came to reality, looking around the room and momentarily freaking out before one of the men got closer to him with the gun in his face, telling him to be quiet. The man with the gun pointed at George demanded to know where the safe was. George's family is loaded, and their house is huge along with their boat, and it's common for rich families to have a safe somewhere in the house. George led the 2 men and myself to his dad's room, to a certain closet. At this point, they forced him to call his dad to get the combination. George explained to his dad that we were being held at gunpoint and he needed to give the combination. George's dad complied. The 2 men took all the contents inside the safe and put them into a bag. This included savings bonds, cash, jewelry, and various important documents. After this, they ran out of the house. We didn't hear a car speed away or anything, so they must have had a getaway vehicle further away, not on the block. After posting on multiple outlets, including the Ring Neighbors feature and reporting it to local news outlets, no one could identify the two men. I think it's fairly safe to say those men on the boat followed us to find out where George lived, since it was a very nice boat and they must have seen potential dollar signs. I'd never been so scared in my life. I actually could have been killed if I made one wrong move. My younger brother and I have childhood friends that go to the beach with our moms for Memorial Day weekend every year. We've been doing this since before my younger brother was born. On our trip about 2 years ago, we had just arrived at the condo complex that we were staying at and had begun to unpack. We were on the first floor, so only 2 flights of stairs to get to our condo. There was some kind of construction happening a few floors above us, so there were trucks and workers. We had finally finished unpacking our stuff, and we were headed down to the beach when I remembered that I left my purse in the car. My mom gave me the keys, and they went down to the beach while I went to the car to grab my purse. But while I was getting it, an old pickup truck pulled into the parking lot, and an older man got out. He had paint on his shorts, so I figured he was a worker. But me, at the time being a teenage semi-petite girl, kept my eye on him. I got my purse, locked the car, and then started heading back to the stairs. I should also mention that the stairs were outside, open for everyone to see. The man started following me up the stairs, but he was several steps behind me. I figured he was headed up to the construction area, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt. Nevertheless, I started walking faster, and when I glanced behind me, the man was only 2 steps behind. This is when I really started to panic. I only had car keys and a purse on me, and I didn't know the layout of the condo yet. Where was the knife block? Was the door to the beach open? I finally reached the door to the condo, ran inside, and tried to close it behind me. The man was at the door and was trying to force it open as I was trying to force it closed. I finally just tried to run for it, hoping the sliding door to the balcony and beach was open. Luckily, my mom and my friend were still inside because they forgot to bring sunscreen down. I ran behind them, and the man just stood in the doorway. "Can we help you?" my mom asked. The man awkwardly smiled and mumbled something about looking for supplies and abruptly closed the door. After I calmed down, we went back to the parking lot, and his car was gone. I'm confident that the man thought I was going to be alone in that condo with him, and I don't like to think about what could have happened if my mom and friend weren't there. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.